Welcome to the Navic Gaming Podcast, where it is our mission to explore the business and future of video games. We bring together the industry's brightest builders, investors, and thinkers to keep a pulse on current events, dissect emerging trends in games, share lessons learned, and have a great time. This podcast is also part of Navic's growing ecosystem, which ranges from free and premium research to consulting and advisory services. For more information, visit www.navic.co. This episode is brought to you by Rally Here, the proven gaming backend platform and service made specifically for cross-platform live service games. Providing cutting-edge tooling for matchmaking, cross-platform accounts, server optimization, live ops management, player progression, and community engagement, Rally Here is the one-stop shop to streamline your development processes, increase speed to market, and optimize your post-launch live services. Rally Here powers games that have been played by over 200 million gamers worldwide across PC, console, and mobile, including Smite, Paladins, Rogue Company, and many others. Rally Here's founders were also among the first to embrace cross-platform free-to-play games, meaning the Rally Here solution incorporates over a decade of hard-won experience and learnings in live service games. Rally Here's partnership approach to customer relationships makes them a trusted and experienced co-pilot to help your team as you develop and operate your live service games. So, do you want to know how Rally Here can help you with your live service game? If so, simply head over to rallyhere.gg to learn more and schedule a demo. Again, that is rallyhere.gg. So, with that, let's jump into the episode.
Welcome to the Navic Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, David Taylor, and today we're going to be talking about Roblox. Roblox is approaching 350 million monthly active users, making it bigger than Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch combined. It's a platform that generated $3.3 billion in bookings last year and paid $740 million to its developers and creators. The low barriers to entry for developers and immediate access to an audience of 350 million players has made it an appealing proposition for indie developers. According to Roblox's most recent estimates, however, there are over 5 million developers on Roblox, making it incredibly competitive and difficult to stand out. Furthermore, the nuanced player expectations have left many professional developers scratching their heads wondering why their Candy Crush-inspired game mechanics never gained traction. Janzen Madsen, aka Jandel, and Nathan Clemens, aka UndoneBuilder, are with us today to share their learnings from 8+ years developing successful Roblox games. Janzen is the creator of breakout hits such as A Dusty Trip, Field Trip Z, Wacky Wizards, and Gunfight Arena, which collectively have 100,000 concurrent players at the time of this podcast. If Janzen were a game, he would be the 8th most popular game on Steam right now. Nathan has launched 24 Roblox games, including the survival game, City Life, and War Simulator, which have garnered over 850 million play sessions. These two know the Roblox meta better than anyone else, so I'm excited to see what insights we can glean as we look for success on the most competitive platform in games, Roblox. So welcome, Nathan. Welcome, Janzen. Excited to have you guys here. I was wondering if you guys could just give us a quick background on your Roblox history, starting from when you first started to develop games and into sort of these breakout successes that you've had over the years. Let's start with Nathan.
Fair enough. So I used to do construction probably about a decade ago, renovation and construction. And part of that was I would do 3D models to like mock up how a building might look or a renovation might turn out, usually like Google SketchUp or CAD. And I realized, hey, I could probably sell this online, to sell my skills as a freelancer. So I found Roblox, and there were people here willing to pay me to build things. So I did. And then after a couple months of doing that, I went, they have money. Where did they get their money? They make games. I could do that. So I just hopped into studio and did my best. And probably took me about 2 years before I had my first big successful game. But then I just cut out the middleman and began making them myself directly. And I don't think I've ever stopped since then.
Amazing.
Yeah, I guess a little bit different, but yeah, I just saw Roblox at a party. I think I was like 19 at the time, and some people were playing Roblox, and I thought it was hilarious. So I downloaded Roblox the next day, and I just made a game, and I guess I got lucky. It was like my biggest game for like 3 years. took me like 2 weeks to make. And then, yeah, I guess like 3 years ago, well, not 3 years after that, I started like getting more serious with developing games, and I made Field Trip Z, which was kind of like my first like big hit, I suppose. And yeah, much the same as Nathan, basically been doing it ever since. Yeah. Why stop?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get to. I have some questions about sort of you guys looking into the future, what you're thinking about. But for now, I just wanted to sort of reflect on that time. Like as you think about the past few years, like what's the coolest thing that you've done on Roblox? It could be the thing you're most proud of, or the most wacky thing that you've done. Just curious, because I know this is such a wild platform.
Sure. I think like my biggest achievement, and this may be like, I guess, cliche, but I think it's amazing, like the like impact Roblox has had, like not only on my life, but like all of the people that work with me's life, right? Like one of my like great partners at the company, like immigrated to New Zealand and like moved his family here. And I've had like people that work with us buy homes and support their families. And for me, like it like it's kind of surreal actually that happens. And yeah, I think that's like my biggest achievement with Roblox is that. I know it sounds kind of cringe and cliche, but yeah, it's a thing that kind of like drives me, I suppose, at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
that's awesome.
Not at all. Mine's very similar, which is that it's helped me fund quite a lot of money towards charity, and we've housed quite a few people that way. It's not cliche at all. That's what makes this worth doing, is how it continually impacts so many lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. It's good.
That's amazing. It's awesome to hear you both sort of taking that altruistic approach. I myself have found that I'm a lot more motivated to work when I'm doing it for others rather than just myself. So really cool to hear that coming through.
Hey, don't get it wrong. You know, I like getting money too. It's not all altruistic.
Yes, we love money. And so that is why we're going to sort of start off the conversation about sort of the Roblox meta, right? What is the keys to success on the platform? How have you guys managed to be successful time in, time out? You know, I think, Janzen, you said, I got lucky, but when we look at your track record, I don't think we can say at this point that it was all luck. You've been able to recreate success numerous times over, as have you, Nathan. So really want to dig into just like taking it step by step of like, what is your guys' process? What do you understand about the Roblox platform today that's enabled you to have so much success when most people who come to the platform are unable to achieve that success? So let's start with game design. Like, could you, each of you, sort of take us through your creative process in terms of coming up with ideas? Because you both have a wide range of games. So yeah, Nathan, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I mean, that is the $700 million question, isn't how to be successful. But
we love money.
That's
what I'm saying.
They did money. Yes, I'd say my process usually is I will have an idea of some kind, usually based around I'll see a feature in some other game or some concept that I've seen around, and I will usually put that on a shelf. I've got like a backlog of probably 200 ideas or so that I then slowly over years refine more and more until that's to the point where I'm like, this is now a game I think will do really well. Like I'll say, Let's Survival Game, one of my most recently successful games. I was probably noodling on or refining for upwards 3 years after I had seen like an original mechanic from like an old game where I'm like, that's an interesting idea. And I just built off of that for years until I finally had a concept that I'm like, that's a game.
I think, yeah, I actually think my design path is like pretty similar to Nathan's. Like often I'll have like a very broad idea. And then, yeah, like Nathan said, I have like all these shelves of like different features and concepts from other games or even from my own brain that I just like pull and use to create like, I guess like a Roblox experience. And game design is not like a one size shoe fits all, like everyone has their own sort of way of doing it and it works for them. So I think like asking like what's the secret sauce of Roblox game design is quite broad, but yeah, I think making a lot of games helps. I think if you've just made a lot of games and make things that you're interested in, I think eventually you'd find success. Yeah.
I think what this significant makes this such a hard question to answer is it's a creative industry. Very specifically, you cannot do what everyone else has done to succeed, which that's not the case for most industries. But here, you have to do something different, which makes it kind of hard to render advice on what someone else should do when the answer has to be, well, not what I did.
Yeah. So all right. So I get that you guys are sort of noodling on this for a while, but like, take us through the point where you're like, okay, I'm going to dedicate resources to this, because you both employ people, you both work with contractors and full-time employees. And so how do you know when it's time to actually, put resources behind it and, decide like, we're going to spend time on this versus any other idea that you have?
Well, I can say for me, I probably run the most inefficient company of all time. In fact, we just change projects every week. So the answer is I don't really know. And usually, and this is sort of a roundabout way of answering your question, is the projects that we start working on and are fun to work on and just come together themselves are usually the projects that succeed. So in terms of like pooling resources, it's just like, it just happens. It's just like kind of a natural process of working in a creative industry, I think. Yeah.
Fair. Mine's almost the exact opposite of that, which I think is why Jandel is quite a bit more successful than I am. I have a much more top-down approach of when one project finishes, it's very clear when another one begins based on my personal feelings on what should or should not happen based on how a game performs or not. So usually the choice to start a new one is when I've decided an old one should be left and the team assigned to a new project.
Got it.
Yeah. Hey, you're better at this than I am. Your way's better than mine.
Dude, I'm writing it down right now. Like, oh, shit, maybe I should do that.
So Nathan, since you sort of have a refined process, maybe more towards you, like when you what are you looking at when you've decided that it's time to move on from an existing project, or like that an idea that you've been noodling on is ready for for those resources?
So I'd say it definitely comes down to two factors. Either the game that was previously being worked on has kind of gotten to the point where it's no longer profitable to have a team on it. Every game has a lifespan. I think that sometimes gets lost to developers that they feel like they should invent a game that will survive forever, but that is not how anything works. And
how many concurrent players is that? How many concurrent players, like if you're looking at a game, it drops below, what number is it that you're like, oh, this probably isn't gonna...
It's not usually a number of players as much as this how much money it makes, because I will say my most successful, some of my most profitable games have less than 10% of some other games and make the same amount of money.
Got it.
It's much more, hey, is this game paying for the team? Is it worth it? Eventually a game hits a point where, hey, you're spending more money to update it than the game can bring back yet. And at that point, it's kind of a no-brainer that you should work on something else. I'd say when I know a project is ready is not so much that I have a feeling like I go, this project is perfect. It's more so one project finishes and I go, oh, okay, it's time to start another. Let me look at my list. I feel pretty confident about these 5. Let me look at each of these. Okay, I think I want to go with that one. This one feels good for the market right now. Now I'm going to really refine it into the final concept that's going to be. And then obviously that's delusional throughout the process of making it. It becomes something completely different. But that's usually how I decide, well, this one's ready.
Awesome. Okay, so thank you so much for that. And let's go to sort of the next phase, right? You've decided we're gonna do this thing. Sounds like you guys are gonna have different approaches to this, which is great. I love hearing the different approaches. So when you're sort of assembling your team, what does the team look like exactly?
You first, Janzen.
You know what? I'm very lucky on Roblox, right? I think the people I work with are truly some of the best on the platform, and I think a lot of these people could make their own games and they could do very well. So yeah, I just have 4 or 5 people that I work with all the time, and these people are highly specialized, can do anything on the platform to probably the highest standard. So yeah, I'm very lucky. I often usually reach out for more team members once we've already created a game and we're doing like live ops content cadence. Like for Dusty Trip, right? We've hired like a lot of people that we haven't worked with before to like do random events. And with Wacky Wizards, it was the same. Like I built that with Matt, and it was doing well with me and him. And then we're like, holy moly, we need to hire some people. And so we did. Yeah. So that's kind of the approach I take, at least. Yeah.
I just one follow-up question for Janzen. Like, so what's the biggest team that you've ended up assembling for a game in live ops?
In live, I mean, probably Dusty Trip. I mean, there's probably like close to like 20 to maybe 30 people.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in that game. Like half the code base is in Russian. I'm not even joking. Yeah, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of refactoring. Anytime we want to add a feature, it's like the worst backend you could probably ever work with. Yeah.
And how are you finding these developers?
Connections, I suppose. Yeah, usually just like either they reach out to me asking if I need any scripting work, or the people I've worked with in the past, like a few years ago, or I just ask a friend and they know someone looking for work. Yeah.
Nathan, how about you?
Well, you are right. We've had about polar opposite experiences. Unfortunately, I've had the exact opposite, where most of the people I've tried to work with long-term turn out to be very poor coworkers, would probably be the best way to put it. So I've had a lot of games that have died very tragic deaths where they just can't be maintained because the other person is just like, just run off or something along those lines. So my company is now kind of made up of a much more like division based. I have very specific teams I've put together, I've assigned, mostly on the programming side. Anything on the modeling, UI, UX, animation side, I kind of have a floating team made up of predominantly myself, and then a handful of artists I've like hand trained to like jump from project to project. But on the coding end, they're very like specifically assigned coders and programmers who I've put together in like their specific teams who maintain the projects and like move from project to project together.
Janzen, anything to add?
Yeah, I think that's a good like infrastructure approach, like to game design. I think that makes sense for like probably 99% of people on Roblox.
Yours is still better.
Yeah, I think like like for us, like we've purposely designed our company. Like there's engineering companies, right? And they're engineering focused, right? People focus on hiring good engineers and retaining good engineers. And for us, like our company is like a game design company, right? So our focus is less like how much money we can make, or is more like, oh, how do we like enable like people to be as creative as possible, because we're like a game design company. So so I guess like, yeah, for us, we just like try to create an environment where people can just like create cool things.
Yeah, makes sense. And I mean, I think that's one of the things that makes Roblox so unique, is just the ability to have people who can do several different roles at the same time. You know, you can do game design, you can do scripting, you can even do art. There are people who have all of those skills, and the Roblox platform sort of makes it possible for you to have those skills.
You gotta stop saying that I'm better than you, Nathan, by the way. Like, you're literally like objectively true by every metric. I don't, this is not a negotiable, like...
But objectively, right, like, you're like one of the most successful Roblox developers, and you're in a very small niche that has like success in multiple projects. I think
true, and you're objectively even more successful by like 3 margins.
Please. Your approach to things is actually like really intelligent, it's thought out, it's analytical. Like, I don't think you should like discredit what you're saying. Like, seriously, like, you actually have a lot of value to add. I think the stuff you're saying is like very important. Like, and even though you're saying like, I mean, the actual reality of like the infrastructure of our company is quite similar to yours. So I think you should stop like dissing yourself. Like, seriously, you're a really great developer. Yeah.
Oh, that means a lot.
I think we're gonna have to include this on the podcast, because I think it's actually representative of what I actually really appreciate about the Roblox ecosystem is everyone is extremely supportive of one another. You know, you have people who have had wild success, made millions of dollars, and are just still in awe of one another. And I think that's really unique about the Roblox space, where in other places like the tech industry or even game development more broadly, like people who have success sort of, you know, become wanting to like close themselves off to everyone else and feel like they have something that people want from them. And I've just found the Roblox ecosystem to be the opposite of that. People who have success want to give back. And so I think, you know, it's great that you guys are you know, organically embodying that as we speak.
Well, I'm going to swap it up now. I'm just going to say, yeah, Nathan's wrong.
We're enemies now, right? For the next 20 minutes.
Yeah, sorry, Nathan. Your approach is wrong to that.
I don't know what that guy's doing over there. It's questionable.
Alrighty. Well, let's move on to sort of the marketing and community side of things. Is like you've designed this game. Like, what is the next step? Like, how do you get people into it to start trying? And I know that there's a whole Roblox discovery algorithm angle that I think our listeners would love to sort of, better understand. So if you could sort of, touch on how you consider the Roblox algorithm and what your marketing activities do to drive that.
This is probably my weakest point. So Jandel, maybe you should.
I think marketing used to be a lot more important on Roblox, and I think the algorithm today, right, it's changing rapidly, and I could give you advice now that's like not relevant in like 2 weeks. But I think Roblox will always serve good games. So Steam's a really interesting platform to look at, right? Like there's games on Steam that are like perfect for me that I discover like 3 years after they release, right? I think Roblox, discoverability on Roblox, like if you have a good game, like you will always find an audience. And I think that's like the biggest value proposition of Roblox. So, like the algorithm's changing a lot and it is hard to get games surfaced. But if your game's good, it will 100%. Like I had games that get, 50,000 concurrents or 20,000 concurrents that you probably never even heard of. And I've done no marketing on them. They just like found an audience. So I think Roblox, that's like the biggest value prop, right? So yeah, I think there's no secret sauce to marketing except just making a good game. Yeah,
I'm in full agreement.
I feel like
by far Roblox is really good. That's certainly in comparison to any other platform. About just if you're making a quality product, there's a pretty good chance you'll be able to find a market. Now, with good marketing, you can find a bigger market sometimes. I'd say there are exceptions to that, but they are rare. Like if you are trying to serve like a very niche specific audience, sometimes Roblox can have a hard time like getting that in front of that specific audience that you're probably going to need to do more legwork for. Like, hey, I very specifically have a game that appeals to like people who like trains so much that like the individual things are modeled very specifically. Like, yeah, that's a valid game design, but you're probably gonna have to put more legwork into getting that in front of people, as opposed to probably the more profitable way to make a game is a game anyone can enjoy. I'll often be asked by like investors or consulting firms who are like, what is the difference between like aging up a game? Like what makes a game more fun for one audience versus another? And my answer to them is probably the same one here, which is if it's fun for one person, generally, if you're designing the game well, it's fun for every age. Like Candy Crush is fun to a 12-year-old as much as it is to a 40-year-old. It's not fun, isn't age or demographic based for most things. So unless you're designing something is going to be niche, Roblox usually is pretty good about it.
I think the folks at ABK might disagree with you on the demographics bit, but I'm curious, so are you guys saying you don't do any marketing?
Jandel?
I mean, I think probably Nathan is in a similar position. I think like we probably have naturally like a lot of fans that will play our games, but I think if you're marketing your game at Roblox, like you're already off to a bad start. Like if you have to market your game to get in front of people, like the game's gonna fail 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Now I was just gonna say, I sometimes market when I'm like very first launching a game, and I'm like, hey, I want to give this. I market to get it in front of people to start with, and then let Roblox do the rest. I don't market with the goal that like, hey, this marketing is going to make the game take off. I think Jansen's right. That is shit. The game's gonna fail. I do some marketing for like, hey, I'm getting this in front of like 10,000 people, so that then Roblox can then show it to more people. And if that doesn't make it take off, okay.
So when you're doing that for, I'm glad we got there finally. So like when you're doing that marketing, that initial marketing, like, are you using YouTubers? Like, what are your levers for getting that initial?
I've tried so hard, honestly, at least for me, and I think this is something Janzen does infinitely better than me, is like relationships with like influencers and stuff like that. That is something I personally have just failed miserably at. Not so much that I'm not friends with many of them, more that just if every time I've gotten an influencer to make a video on one of my games that they didn't naturally decide to do themselves, it has done nothing to help the game. I don't know what it is, but like they could highlight the coolest aspects about it. If they didn't naturally decide to make a video on it, it is useless. They could have 10 million subscribers. I could pay them $5,000. It won't matter. You'll get maybe a couple dozen people. But if they naturally decide they want to make the video, up by thousands. I don't understand it. It's an enigma through and through, but yeah.
So how do you get them to do it organically?
You just let them find it. There's no other way I've ever found. They just have to see the game naturally, either by a fan's recommendation or by advertisement. I might poke one of them and say, hey, this is something you might enjoy. But by and large, they just have to decide it for themselves, and there's no way around that.
Yeah, you make a good
Janzen.
Yeah. Surprisingly. It's amazing.
Janzen, how about you?
Yeah. What do you mean? Like, I just make good games. You know, like I just focus on making good games, and I'm friends with a lot of YouTubers, but I never ask them to make videos. And I think Nathan's right? Like, I think if you ask them to make a video, they're probably shoehorning something to their audience that like doesn't fit super well. So, you know, like the organic engagement is probably the best engagement you can get across the board in any industry, right? So,
do you guys think that that your reputations allow you to always be noticed by YouTubers without trying?
No, absolutely not. Yeah. Not even a little bit. When I release a new game, no one. I am starting from scratch as much as every other person who released a Roblox game is starting from scratch with every new release. It's not even close. I have tried. Don't get me wrong. I have tried to like build a community where I can turn over success into new projects, but with the exception of maybe one studio on all of Roblox, that is just not something you can do. Like that's just not. It doesn't work.
Well, I mean, I'm in the Simple Games Discord, and I see you guys cross-marketing your games. So I know that you're doing it.
I've certainly tried.
Yeah, but that's not moving the needle for you.
Nope, not even a little bit.
No, yeah, I make games on alts all the time, and they still become successful.
Yeah, I switch up groups. I've got a bunch of games I don't mention in Simple Games. You know, I swap it up for like going to buy different projects and stuff like that that people wouldn't know is made by me.
And so, all right, so it sounds like you're not using Discord for marketing. You're not using YouTube for marketing. You're just sort of making
for like initial games, sure. But like if you have like an established game, then like that stuff becomes important, right?
Yeah, Discord is super important for maintaining a game.
Yeah.
Useless for marketing.
Okay, so let's transition to sort of live ops. Like, so we talked about your team size a bit. You know, how do you know? Is it pretty obvious when you have a game that's, you know, taking off? Or, you know, I imagine sometimes you put a game out there and you need to refine it. You need to quickly iterate to make it better, and then it might take off once you sort of find that sweet spot. Is that right? And then the question being like, how do you know if something's worth continuing to refine versus moving on to a different concept?
I'd say for me, usually it's pretty apparent if by the end of the development cycle, when I'm like, this game is done, if it hasn't built some kind of audience by then, it's probably not going to work. There's probably a fundamental flaw. Like throughout the process of development, I am often just completely refining a game. I'm going like, hey, this original idea, I don't like that idea I had. This fits better over here. I'm constantly refining it till I think it's fun. And if by the end of that it hasn't worked, it's probably not worth continuing to noodle on. At least for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think Roblox, one of its like biggest, like, I mean, I'm going to use this word a million times, but value propositions is that you can basically release a prototype. And if the theme and the gameplay is engaging, like people will play it, right? If you release your prototype and no one plays it, then like just don't work on it. To your point though, you know, Dusty Trip's a good example. Like I purchased Dusty Trip and it was on like 4,000 or 5,000 players, and there was like a lot of fundamental flaws with the game, in my opinion. So like I changed them, and then like within 2 weeks the game was at like 70,000, 80,000 players. So yeah, there's a lot of the times there are like things that you could refine and change in games that do help push the needle, but the game was terrible and it still had 5,000 players in it. You know what I mean? So it's like the game was terrible. There's no tutorial. Like the lobby system was like literally broken, and there's 5,000 people in it. And you know why? Because Roblox is amazing, and people will play like junk if it's like engaging and interesting. So that and that's why, like, yeah, if you have like a game that you worked on for 6 months and no one's playing it, like, yeah, it's just the truth. Like, you just ditch it. And I think that's what me and Nathan do really well.
Awesome. And so, Janzen, you just mentioned that you bought a Dusty Trip. So when this was, I imagine, are you sort of looking at the top games and seeing which ones bubble up and then, asking yourself, can I make this game better? Is that part of your approach to some of the games that you make?
Yeah, I like don't like purchasing games, actually. I like don't feel like a great sense of achievement from it, because I like designing things. And how Dusty Trip came about is they like reached out to me wanting to sell the game, and I played it and I thought there was like a lot to improve. So that's kind of how that came about. I know that kind of doesn't really answer your question, but
I mean, so it sounds like it's not usually how you do it. This one just sort of serendipitously fell into your lap, and you were like, okay, it has 4,000 players in it, and it's totally broken. If I fix it, it could be much bigger.
Yeah, as big as it got. Like, I didn't think that, but yeah, sure. I mean, the game is good. Like, I'm not going to like rag on the previous developer. There was just like a lot of like, I would say like fundamental like flaws for a Roblox game that I think were holding it back.
It's a really unique game for the platform, honestly. Like, it's pretty cool to see that taking off, because I feel like it is sort of, you don't see many other games that look that way. Nathan's looking at me like, what do you mean it's unique?
Yeah, I was just about to disagree. Like, I feel like it's the essence of a Roblox game. Like, I think it's the quintessential example of a Roblox game. And I think a lot of these like developers that come to Roblox like miss like what makes Roblox. And that's why Dusty Trip's such a popular game, because it's like quote unquote different, but it's like it's at its essence such a Roblox game. Yeah.
But can you? All right. So learn me about what makes this the quintessential Roblox game.
It's buggy. It's funny. It has physics. Like, random stuff happens. It's just like a Roblox game. Like, that's what it is. It's like super gameplay focused. Like, you don't have like any of this like auxiliary junk, like, storyline and stuff. It's just like you can get in there, you play with your friends, it's social. Like, it just hits every mark that like a Roblox game needs to be.
It's like refined down to the absolute core elements that make a game fun and nothing else.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah, because you see, I mean, there's other games like tycoon games and simulator games and roleplay games, and they all feel like they've removed all of the gameplay parts, and it's just the mechanics are just like right there in front of you.
Yeah, and I think those games are interesting. I'm going to take a quote from On It, who made Bee Swarm Simulator, probably the best developer on the platform in terms of game designers. Those games are interesting because they're like a lineage of like game design, essentially. Like, if you play the first simulator games on Roblox, they feel very Robloxy, and they are like kind of weird and buggy and funky. But then over time, like the refinement of the genre has like sort of created this like new niche of Roblox game. This, it's like interesting to look at those games, sort of like the lineage of how they've come about.
Yeah, that's super cool. I mean, one of the questions I have for you guys, since we're on the topic, and we'll come back to live ops because I think I have a few more questions there, but like, how has the Roblox platform evolved during your 8+ years on the platform? Are there things that you have to do differently today that weren't the case before? Or are there things you did, back in the day that are no longer relevant today?
I'd say for me, fundamentally, it's been almost, I think, 10 years now. I mean, there has been a fundamental shift in like, and this is going to sound weird from an outside perspective, but there's been a shift in like the quality expectation for a game's release. Like, I will say, if I were to release the first game that I did really well with, that like was like the second biggest on Roblox for a couple of years, like 8 years ago, it wouldn't do well anymore because you need to put in more things. I'll say, like, back then, my game was a tycoon. Essentially, it didn't even save. Every time you rejoin the game, you had to start it from scratch. Saving wasn't even a concept back then. So now, if you were to make the same game, you would need to add saving. That's something essential to making the game fun. The core of you're still releasing bare bones fun games is still here. That has not changed. I will say it takes longer. It takes more. Like I'll say my average development cycle is maybe 3 months for a game, whereas it used to be maybe a month, month and a half. It takes more effort than it used to. But I don't think the core of what makes things fun has ever changed. It's just there's more tools, so a little bit more that needs to go into it.
Makes sense. Janzen, anything on your end?
What's changed over the last 8 years? I mean, lots. Yeah, I mean, Nathan had it well. Quality of games. I still think that, like, comparative to other platforms, like your time to market is still like insanely short. Yeah, I think that marketing used to matter a lot more. Like I think in 2020, 2021, like I would say like the bread and butter of my Roblox career was basically like getting YouTubers to play my games. And that's what like I did well, and that's why I succeeded. And that's changed now, right? Like that's just so like non-impactful. So I don't even talk to those people anymore. Just kidding. They're still all my friends, but it's just like it's like they're like yeah, I think the impact on the games is like not as much as it used to be. And yeah, like I said, like I think the lineage of like genres on Roblox is just interesting to follow, right? You see, like, I mean, Piggy's a good example, right? Like Piggy was like this horror game that came out, an amazing game. But compared to like horror games now, like pretty low quality, right? So you see like the lineage of like these new breakout genres come, and
it itself was like the fourth iteration of that. And it itself was like the fourth iteration.
Yes.
Of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you see like the quality of that genre get like more and more complex, which is why like when these new genres break out, right? Like they're often like quite easy to replicate and quite easy to improve on. Yeah.
So, you know, and this sort of goes back to the live ops question, is like, if you have a game that's successful, you totally expect that someone's going to try to replicate it and do better. Either, you know, make it more complex, make it higher fidelity, you know, improve a specific game mechanic. Is that something that you're worried about on your existing successful games? Like, or are you just sort of accepting of it and you're like, this will eventually become obsolete and I'll build something new?
I actually think it's really cool when people like make other projects that are better than mine. And I'm like, I would say I'm a pretty competitive guy, you know? So when I see someone do something better than me, like I just want to do better than what they did. So like, yeah, I think it's really cool. And no, I'm not worried about it. I kind of embrace it, like steep steps. So I don't know if the game's about climbing a mountain of the ladder. Like we literally just released the mechanics for free. Like, so I don't know, whatever, let's see what other people make. And then to the point, like all these people, like it kind of like the lineage thing, right? Like the shoot of that game was like all these 2-player games, these 2-player obby games. And I like totally missed the mark on that, right? Like I completely missed it, like did not even see this coming. And like all of those games now, like way more successful than like Steep Steps ever was, because those people like saw what people actually wanted to do with the mechanic. Yeah.
So when you see like, have you ever been in a position where you have a successful game and then you see a competitor come out that is replicating your game but doing something differently? You know, do you ever try to, you know, steal, you know, take that idea back and integrate it into your game? How does that dynamic
Sometimes
work?
I don't know. I've tried it before and I think it fails. I think, yeah, I've never been successful with it. Maybe a better designer could be, but for me, like that's never really been.
Yeah, same. I've never seen it work. I mean, I think one thing that people significantly undervalue, and probably the first folly just game developers in general have on and off Roblox, is missing how important being to the first of the market is. Like that is a near insurmountable advantage that it takes some serious good design or flaws in the original to overcome that. Like it's not that like these big games that have been around for decades and on top are the best possible versions of their formula. They're not, but they were the first to do it that well. And there's no beating that. No amount of money, no better features, no better graphics can ever overcome that. Like the first folly of every game dev, and I fell prey to this too when I started, was, I could just make that game but better, and then I'll get their market. No, not in the slightest. You have to do something significantly different to succeed, and by the time you're significantly different enough to succeed, you're probably not competing with the original game. I think that's probably the most fascinating thing to me, is like, I don't think I've ever had a game that is a direct competitor to anything I've ever made. I've had games I thought were, And then I would watch them shoot up to skyrocketing numbers and realize it didn't change my numbers at all. Players were playing both. They might enjoy both my game and their game, but it never diminished the profits or player counts of my games. I've just, every time I'm convinced that, oh, maybe they're going to take my market share, they never do. I think just the idea of competition on Roblox is just not what you'd expect it to be, and kind of counterintuitive. Unlike most markets, we're kind of just not in competition with each other.
I mean, I guess, Janzen, I'd love you to reconcile that with what you said before of like, you've seen people who have used your sort of game ideas and then been even more successful than you. Like, is there sort of a nuance there that I'm missing?
So I wouldn't say they use my game ideas. Like, it's like taking like a holistic approach, like sort of like the feel and theme of the game. You can tell they're like derivatives, if that makes sense. Like, I wouldn't say, they might not even play my game and be like, I want to recreate this. I just think that the like feel and theme of the game has like created these derivatives that like are the obvious path where I should have like improved on my game, if that makes sense, to be successful.
I think an important detail, not to butt in on Jansen's answer, is his game's still successful. It did not kill his game to have other more successful games. He's still doing awesome. Even that game in specific still gets very high numbers.
Yeah, makes sense. What do you think what about Roblox makes it so that there is less of a competitive aspect? Because in the broader game industry, like, you do see that. Like, when Fortnite was super successful, Apex Legends numbers went down, right? And so, like, what is it about Roblox that makes it so that, you know, there isn't that much of a competition?
Probably game life cycles. And I think you have, long tail games that are very rare on Roblox. And I think you do see that in the top echelon of games. I mean, a good example, I think, would be Bloxburg compared to Brookhaven, or even Brookhaven compared to Adopt Me. I think those games do actually see quite a lot of competitiveness and market share. I don't think it drives game design decisions. I think those people at the top don't look at the other games and think, I should be doing this. But I do think you do see in that top echelon, I think you do see probably some market share getting taken away. I mean, it's like saying Stardew Valley lost 30% of their players to the Minecraft update. It's no, it's in that kind of medium scale tier. I don't think you see the competitive market share.
I think it's also worth noting that players don't play Roblox games for nearly as long as they play other games. They're spread out much more. Your average kid playing Roblox is playing a dozen different games in their hour-long play session. I think the average play time is 12 minutes for a Roblox game. If you're doing really well, my best games, 20, or if you're super niche and only have 40 people to skew the numbers, 40 minutes. There's I think it really changes the competitive landscape when they're only spending 12 minutes in the game to begin with, so they can play both games. They can play your game and 12 other games in their session, and it won't dent you at all. That just is how the nature works. They can enjoy both very easily, and that just is how they enjoy the platform, which isn't really how other gaming platforms, how you consume media. You play Fortnite with a group of friends, you're playing for 2 hours of the same game. You're not switching between Apex and Fortnite. On Roblox, yeah, I think players very much. I know players jump between 3 games that would otherwise be competition with mine in the same session because they're just having fun. Just how they consume media here.
Yeah, do you think YouTubers are worried about other YouTubers taking away markets?
That's a good point.
Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, so moving on to we'll continue to talk about live ops a bit. I just wanted to sort of get a sense of what does a week in live ops look like for a game for each of you? What are you guys doing on a week-to-week basis for Dusty Trip, Janzen and Nathan for the survival game? What does a week for you on those games look like?
I mean, I think we're kind of in the thick of it right now. So I mean, a week to week right now is I'm waking up 3:30 a.m. and probably working to around 5 p.m., 7 p.m. every day. But I mean, that's not the average week probably across my Roblox career. So yeah, I do a lot of game design. I even do a lot of programming actually, and making sure people getting the stuff done that needs to be done. Yeah, that's also like
Most important part.
pretty important. I really like programming, and I really like getting my hands dirty, but yeah, it does. I guess you do hit like a certain critical mass where you kind of have to be, I guess, more managerial, which sucks. Yeah.
I'd say for me, for like survival game, that was very much that to start with. Like the first 3 months of any big game's release is just like 12 to 18 hour days of just like, this is my life now. Nowadays, and once a game gets older, you can settle into a much slower pace of like, nowadays there's like we don't do weekly updates. We don't even schedule our updates anymore. I find that something people don't. I find that overrated. Many developers swear to like, oh, you must update every week, even if it's not worth updating. Like, I don't find that nearly as important as most people sell it as. So usually a week of content cadence will look like, hey, here's what I think it should be this week. Here's the team. Here's the idea. Work on it. This might take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on how big that project is. And then we usually release it on a Friday. That might be 2 or 3 weeks in between each update. Just depends.
So Nathan, you are sort of directing what the update's going to be and assigning the team, and then following up with them to make sure they're getting it done. That's sort of what a week looks like for you. And Janzen, sounds like
usually also add on to that I'm usually also designing half of it myself, like doing the modeling and UI and such for it. Yeah.
Do you guys use game design documents and stuff, or you're not much into documentation?
Well, I guess that depends on your version of documentation. Every now and then, like when I'm first starting a game, I'll like write up a Google Doc just so everyone's on the same page of like what the general feel is. And then I will never touch the Google Doc again. And then maybe like on super big games, I'll have like for survival game, there's like a backlog of like, here's cool update ideas. So when I need a new idea, I'll just look at the backlog and see and like pick one. But that's a pretty loose definition of a game doc.
But like, all right, so like a feature document, like you're going to release a new feature. Do you put together like all of the mechanics for how that feature is going to work in a document, or are you just sort of verbiating
in a Discord message?
Yeah. Okay.
I think those sorts of processes and ideas are important when you're at scale. And I think most Roblox developers are not at scale. I mean, there's like 7 people working on features at Dusty Trip, right? Like I can call everyone and explain what I want to do. And it's like not a stretch, right? Now let's say we have 50 people working on the game, right? I think those processes start to become a lot more important. I think like it's a lot of the stuff is like a dialogue and at least at my studio, it sounds like Nathan's exactly the same. It's like a dialogue that you just have with people. You just talk about it, you know? And we have like a Trello document that you like write down specific tasks, but it's like, I mean, like at the end of the day, right, it's a Roblox game, right? Like if someone's having trouble, like if someone needs like a spec sheet to build like a season's pass or something, it's like, what do you mean? It just needs to like progress, you know, or like, you know, like, oh, I want to have a new car. Like I don't need to spec out how a new car works. Like everyone knows how a car rides, or, you know, so I think, yeah, just because most Roblox studios are at scale, I think most people don't do that.
If it's complicated enough that it's something that like interacts with so many systems that you need to worry about that, then I just deal with that part myself. Then I just go, well, I'm the one who made this game. I get how this works. I'm not assigning the task of you understanding that to anyone else. Just give me the other parts and I make that part work. There's no you don't offload that part. At least I don't.
Me and like maybe like one other person. Well, actually, I mean, Dusty's pretty unique, actually. Everyone understands the back end because you can't do anything about understanding it. It's so bad. So I think I'm lucky in that regard. But in previous games, it's exactly the same as Nathan. Like really cool systems that are important, I'll just code them. Yeah.
Jen, just a quick question on Dusty Trip. So when you got this game, like, did you think about sort of revamping the back end, or you were just like, this is it, and we're going to sort of just build off of that?
I mean, we thought about it. we thought about it. We wanted to. I think it as well. Like on like another note, and I think this was the right decision at the time. I really when you redesign core games, like the back ends of games, they always feel like slightly different. And for me, like Dusty Trip, like something about Dusty Trip, and I don't even think I could put a finger on it right now, right? Like something about Dusty Trip, and I don't know if it's because it's buggy and people like trying to figure out the jank of it or something. it works, right? And I don't know what that is about Dusty Trip that works. So I actually just intentionally left a lot of the bugs in the game because I wasn't sure what line do I cross where I start to lose the feel of the game. People join, they don't know how the hell the car works. They finally get the car to work and they drive 100 meters and some game-breaking bug glitches them out and they die. And that's terrible game design, right? But I feel like it's kind of part of the charm, and I didn't want to redesign the back end and lose that essence of what the game was. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but at the time it was just sort of like a risk analysis that I took. And the game's doing very well. It's still doing very well. So I think it was probably the right move. Yeah.
So while we're on the topic of Dusty Trip, I mean, we hadn't really planned this, but Dusty Trip blew up over the weekend, and what happened? How did do you have a sense of what led to that huge spike in players?
Yeah, I do actually. And it wasn't intentional. So I'm not going to sit here and claim I'm some genius, but we've been doing I would say the monetization in Dusty has been quite aggressive, right? And the value of cars is not only the value of buying other cars is not just an in-game currency thing. It's got intrinsic value to Robux. And I think the cheapest car we sold was $5, and then most cars are $25, right? So with the update, I was I'll put a Mustang that you can get for free if you're there on the update release. And I didn't realize the intrinsic value I'd created by accident of selling these cars for so much money. And I think people really wanted the car, obviously. So yeah, that's what happened, basically. I think it was just and I mean, the update was really, the update's a great update, right? It's a new biome, super, this is the reason I'm putting the car out, right? Because the update is actually a great update. So yeah, that's the answer, I think. But you never know with Roblox or game design in general,
Yeah. And so actually this is probably thanks for sharing that. I was just curious, didn't have the context. So this might be a good time to sort of just transition to our last topic, which is on brand activation. So you mentioned, you put a Mustang car in the game. In theory, that could have been...
It wasn't a Mustang. It's a Mustang type car. No, it is a Mustang. It was a Mustang type car.
It was a Mustang. It was a Mustang. Yeah. And so, yeah. So I'm curious. Dusty Trip is a great example. Have you thought at all about putting, a real brand in there and potentially monetizing further with the use of that sort of brand advertising component?
Yeah. I think the answer is yes. I think Dusty is probably arguably one of the biggest driving games in the world right now. So yeah, yeah.
You've thought about it, but that's about as far as you've gone.
Johnny, Johnny Dubik owns 40% of the game, and I think he's a little more active in that space. I find that sort of stuff pretty uninteresting.
How about you?
So if you ask him,
I've done it before. We've done brand integrations into our existing games where we popular musicians or brands will come to us to put things in the game. The short answer is that being good at game design just pays so much better than putting things in the game. Even the biggest brands, they're not shelling out millions of dollars for these things. They're trying to get good deals on, how to put an ad in. They're pricing it the same as if they're going to run an ad on YouTube. Some of them are okay deals, but literally just spending the time to do a good content update or make a good new game pays just so much better than putting, I won't mention any brand names, any brand
You're welcome
into
to
the game.
Yeah.
It just eventually just became not worth it. It's just the effort of, okay, it's a 2-month process to talk through, sell them on it, negotiate through it, sign contracts, get them to approve for their very specific, they don't want their brand misrepresented. It's a huge amount of effort for even the most generous of brands. You could just do better by just being good at game design. So we just don't anymore. I know that's an unsatisfying answer, but
we had Shan Cheng from Century Games on the podcast, and he let us know that 50% of Livetopia's revenue comes from brand activations. So,
and that does make sense, especially because Livetopia is a roleplay game, which inherently has significantly less monetization than your average game title, which is awesome. I'm so glad that works for them. I think that plays back to one of your original questions, which is like, how do you decide what's worth it for an individual game? Yeah, that type of game being that much less monetized per user would be perfect for a brand integration to make up for that.
I would say that like I think the right brand integration is like should be easy for everyone. So yeah, maybe Nathan's had some shitters.
I can't talk about that recording, but there have been some fun ones.
No, yeah, I've actually built like games for brands as well, and
same.
And one of them did really well, Sesame Street. In fact, it was like I think it's like the biggest single player game on Roblox. And then also I did like one of the biggest brand games on Roblox, and then also like probably the biggest educational game on Roblox. Like it's a fully like STEM learning like equivalent game, and like those guys are amazing to work with. Like because to sound super arrogant, like they listened to me basically. And then I built other games for brands and had very constrained like guidelines, and the game was awful, and I've never done it again. So now when brands reach out to me, I'm like, yeah, like I'll build you a game, but like what I'm good at is making games with Roblox, and if you're on board that, then I'm on board that.
Yeah. I mean, I think we said that a number of times. I've said it on my channels of like, you really need to work with game designers who are from the platform if you're going to maximize your reach as a brand. And I think that speaks to your success with Sesame Street, which has 47 million visits, which is like, unheard of for a branded experience. I mean, there are experiences that have been around for a couple of years that have more than that, but like it's quite substantial.
And it's single player, right? Like it's like there's no single player games
and single player.
But I mean, those guys are like they're amazing. I actually learned so much from them. They've got great game designers too. So yeah, like their process was like. And to be fair, to give credit where credit's due, Matt Forex actually really spearheaded that project, and I think really did create why I was successful. I made like a really terrible prototype that they were like, yeah, we could make a game from this, and then Matt actually made like the reason it succeeded.
All right, we're gonna do a lightning round to close out the podcast. So I'm just gonna go through these questions real quick. Give me like your 15-20 second response on each. So what do you think Roblox's biggest risk as a platform is?
I think Roblox. I don't think UFN is a risk to Roblox. I don't think any platforms right now like an immediate risk to Roblox. I think maybe platform direction could be a risk to Roblox. Yeah.
I think Roblox is the only risk to Roblox. The only one who can dethrone them is if they make poor enough choices, and I don't think they will.
Yeah, the same. Awesome. Well, to that end, next question. What is one thing Roblox does really well and one thing that they do really poorly?
You're asking the wrong guy to complain. Yeah, Roblox does really well serving games, right? Like user acquisition on Roblox is like the best in the world. Like you're not going to get that on any other platform. One thing they do poorly, I don't know.
I mean, my answer would be the same as Jandel's for what they do well, but I guess to mix it up so that they're not the same answer, Roblox is fantastic with performance. You can play Roblox on devices and in countries that you can't play any other devices, any other kinds of games on, and that's why they dominate the world without competition. They're incredible at that. What they do poorly, I mean, that's a hard thing to answer because the Roblox is good about if they do something poorly, they still let the market decide whether or not that will matter. Like they make plenty of bad decisions. Like they're a corporation. They make tons of bad decisions. But because it's still up to the player what they play and whether the developer what they develop, those just don't matter generally. Like if an update is bad, if they release a poor feature that does poorly, no one uses it. No one plays it. It gets forgotten. And so only the good ones ever surface. So I guess the answer would be, it doesn't matter what their worst thing is. It just, yeah.
All right, next question. Do you guys think about making games on other platforms ever?
Yeah, and I do. I've got a division on Fortnite, UAFN.
Oh, nice.
It sucks.
Yeah, I mean, of course, right? Like that's like asking like a YouTuber if they ever think about making movies. I'm sure they do. But yeah, I don't think I've ever thought about it and then actually thought about acting on it. That makes sense. I think for me at least, Roblox. It's like
Awesome. And then last question, who is the person you most depend on today to run your business?
Sam. He's like my producer, but he's pretty much the CEO. Yeah.
I have unfortunately built a business where I don't have anyone I would rely on. I just kind of have to do it myself. I hope to change that someday.
Yeah, you need a Sam.
Awesome.
Trust I do. You don't know how much I desperately want what you have in the people you work with. They are so good. I mean, you're incredible yourself, but like the team you've surrounded with yourself with, man, it is incredible. You guys,
I'm very lucky. Yeah, I feel like very lucky. And to think they all work for free. Yeah.
If people want to follow you guys, like what's the best channel for them to follow you on?
I have a YouTube called Simple Games that you can watch some tutorials I make sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, actually, Nathan has a great YouTube, and I like watching Nathan's YouTube because I think it's a good insight. Like, Nathan has a really good insight into actually, like, actionables on game design. Like, people ask me, like, oh, what can you do to make a game? I'll be like, oh, like, just make one, you know? Nathan will actually like, break down the process. Yeah, it's like, his YouTube's really good.
You're too nice, man. God damn it.
I also concur. I watched one of the videos. I wasn't sure if you're going to bring in sort of the personality that you do on those videos into the podcast today. It would have been welcome for the record.
That takes, you know how many cuts that takes to not break?
Janzen, what's the best way for people to follow you?
I don't know, Twitter or something. I don't, or LinkedIn.
We'll put the link in the show notes.
That is a flex.
Nathan, Janzen, it's been awesome to have you on the podcast. Thanks for stopping by.
If you enjoyed today's episode, whether on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, or give a 5-star review. And if you want to reach out or provide feedback, shoot us a note at podcast@naavik.co or find us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Plus, if you want to learn more about what Naavik has to offer, make sure to check out our website, www.naavik.co. There, you can sign up for the #1 games industry newsletter, Naavik Digest, or contact us to learn about our wide-ranging consulting and advisory services. Again, that is www.naavik.co. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.